welcome you to our first August edition of Big Noon Kickoff, the offseason. Glad you're with us. Rob Stone, Urban Meyer, Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart, and Joel Klatt. Wow, the last few hours across the college football landscape may be seismic. So much to get to, so let's get right into our headlines. And boy, there have been a lot of headlines. So many headlines, we can't even include UConn opting out of college football in 2020. We start with the SEC that held a call with players a few days ago saying positive tests are a given. I think we're all at this point where we understand and accept that, whether that's college or professional sports. Number two, Power 5 conference leaders have had discussions about some breakaway fall championships should the NCAA postpone or cancel them. All of these are massive topics, but they're being pushed aside by some of the growing player discussions that they've started. One of them, Big Ten players and the Pac-12 have sent demands for an upcoming season and beyond. The Big Ten players just did it Wednesday morning. It's much more health-centric. The Pac-12 is talking about major financial changes on the college football landscape, and we're going to jump into that in just a moment. More headlines coming your way. Players now starting to opt out of the season. Rashad Bateman, who we had, guys, as the number 5 wide receiver in the nation from Minnesota, electing to prepare for the NFL. He's projected as a first-round draft pick. Ditto for Penn State linebacker Micah Parsons. We had him as our number 3 overall defender. Both those players opting out of the season to prepare for the NFL. Pac-12 making really the major news with their unity demands. Health and safety protections they were asking for, much like what the Big Ten did, looking for adequate testing, medical testing for 6 years after eligibility ends. They want to protect all sports, so this isn't just a football ask. Racial injustice in college sports and society, looking for movement in that department. And then the economic freedom and equality, a lot of that focusing on name, image, and likeness, NIL. You're going to hear a lot about those 3 letters in the next couple months. Channeling down the Pac-12 player demands a little bit more. We're talking the financial aspects of it right now, and that's going to be our leaping off point. The big one, they would like to distribute 50% of each sport's total conference revenue evenly among the athletes in their respective sports. So 50% of what college football accrues profit-wise at a Pac-12 institute goes to the players rather than the, quote, general fund of athletics, which so often goes to support so many other programs across that landscape on that institution. So a lot to get into. Coach, let's start with you. And we're going to talk again about these Pac-12 financial demands made by the players. And you look at it not just from a coaching perspective, but also one of a parent.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. And this is incredible times right now, times that in my lifetime I've never experienced. None of us have. There's no template for this. There's so many positive things coming out of it, but there are a lot of things that are alarming. And college athletics have been very good to my family. My 2 daughters, one's a president of a company and one owns her own company. And they are a result of excellent coaches, being part of a team. Team sports have always been my favorite because you learn selflessness. The best teams I've ever had were the ones that would put team ahead of self. And so I may look at an archaic way of looking at it. Some people say, Coach, that's not the way it is anymore. And I'm heartbroken if that's the truth, because I coached at Bowling Green. We got on a bus, drove 8 hours, and beat a Northwestern. I believe they were a ranked team, scored 29 points in the 4th quarter. And I know for a fact that was a moment those players will never forget. Matter of fact, I once again, I'm old-fashioned. I really think that helped change people's lives that day to understand that the selflessness approach, we can do anything together. If we put ourselves behind team, we can go beat anybody on any given day. This Utah team had the same perspective when they were the first BCS, non-BCS school to make a bowl game. So I'm partially heartbroken. I understand where we're at. I think there could be some come out of it. But when I hear disassociation with the NCAA and a Power 5 breakaway, I hope it's not permanent. I can understand this year being some unique situations. But I am old-fashioned. I guess I'm proud I'm old-fashioned. I believe a college education is extremely valuable. I don't believe, I know. Because once again, my family has experienced it. My two daughters were Division I volleyball players. I don't want to see that sport disappear. I don't want to see any sports, women's sports, men's sports. I don't want to see them disappear because I think the greater good, learn from those sports, helps society, helps all of us.
We all respect the value of the education and the ability to be a student athlete, but Reggie, the college football player is different because in most institutions, they are a money-making machine, and it's the players that a lot of people will tell you are making that money.
Well, the players are the primary stakeholder in college football, period. Fans come to the games to see players play. Fans go to the games to see Justin Fields spin the ball and put it in places where only he can put it. And with that said, that's why we are here. And you just listed a ton of headlines that just make you kind of scratch your head and think about what is the future for the NCAA and for college football? Because we're seeing now that there's been conversations about, does the Power 5 conferences even need the NCAA? Because a lot of the things that the NCAA has done, they can do for themselves. And so when you look at the demands that have been sent by the players, both Big Ten and Pac-12, and soon to come other conferences as well, you're starting to see players realize that they realize their value in this situation, realize their value in this game. And it's important for people to understand. That's important for people to know that, because at the end of the day, I do believe you need an education. I just don't know how important that degree is given the current state of college sports, right? I do believe that your education is very important, but how you get that education is up to you. And so that's why I see, again, we talk about the value of education and the value of a degree, and I 100% believe in that. However, for these young kids, they're starting to realize that a lot of these other sports, as Coach just talked about, only survive because of college football. You know what I mean? And so then what that does is it kind of brings you back to the question of, okay, if I'm a college football player, is it fair for me to sacrifice my brain, my body, my limbs, my livelihood so that other sports can succeed when I'm not even getting a share in the revenue that I'm bringing in for this very sport?
I got a scholarship to play football at USC. And for me, even looking back, I'm still extremely grateful for the opportunity USC gave me, not only to play football, but to get an education and to network and to meet very important, influential people, not only in the sports world, but in the business world, as I continue to have endeavors outside of our show and try and do many things. And that's what USC gave me. That's what the education there gave me. And I think, Reggie, to your point, yeah, you see a lot of guys who can, take classes or study online. And there's so many things available for all of us now without going to school. But I still look at what my USC experience being on a football team, winning, the things Coach talked about, the selflessness, the discipline, all the life lessons football taught me, I really apply now, even as a father, a businessman, and every aspect of my life. Now, when I do look back, and Reggie, you and I were a part of this,
yeah.
The run that we went on and the amount of money that we, our team, other players made for USC, and not really reaping those benefits, I understand where the players are what they're asking. And that's where the name, image, and likeness comes into play. And I'm all for it. I think the players and the student athletes, both men and women, should have the opportunity to capitalize on their name if those opportunities are presented themselves. But I don't want that to happen at the expense of other sports in college, because to Coach's point, college, man, I love all college sports. I love watching college basketball. I love watching college baseball, the World Series in June, in Omaha. Like, I love all of those things. And we're starting to see some of these sports disappear because of what's going on economically in the college world. So, I'm all for the change. I think this is a great time for these players. Their voices are finally being heard. But at some point, I just don't want to see it affect and have the trickle down effect on men's sports, on women's sports, like we've seen from Stanford, like we've seen from other major institutions in this country.
I think you all bring up like excellent points, and I think that's what makes the conversation so difficult, right? There's so many different things that you can touch on and talk towards. Let me start with this whole, autonomous Power 5 breaking away potentially from the NCAA. I do believe that the NCAA does not create a complete umbrella over college football specifically, as far as an overarching governing body. And we're seeing the fruits of that right now with all the different types of schedules and no one decision maker and so on and so forth. It's eerily similar to what our country was back at its founding. When you think about 13 colonies that didn't have an overarching governing body right after the Revolutionary War, before the Constitutional Convention, what you had is 13 essentially territories that could adhere to international law. They kind of made their own decisions in that regard. So what did we need? We needed a federal government. Well, that's exactly what college football needs. We need a constitutional convention to give us an overarching governing body that allows us to navigate the very difficult subjects that we're talking about. So I think I would start with that. Now I want to move more a little bit towards some of those specific player things and more specifically out of the Pac-12, because Reggie, you're right. And Coach, you're right. And Matt, you're right. That's what makes the conversation so difficult. I believe that some players, not all, have enormous value over the value of the scholarship that was given to them to play football. But that is a very small minority. Reggie, you and Matt are in a very small minority that actually had value over what the university was already providing you, right? The overwhelming majority, 99% of college athletes across all sports are net takers from the system, not net givers to the system economically. Therefore, rather than talking about revenue splits, I think we should talk about name, image, and likeness, to allow the few boats that can rise above the tide, like you and Matt and some of those other, like Zion Williamson. We allow the opportunities for that player to go and realize their market value, their name equity in the fair competitive marketplace. And yet what we're not doing is destroying opportunities in the college structure by taking revenue from football and distributing it to athletes to make them employees. One, they're going to have tax liabilities. Two, they're going to have to start paying for their own school. There's so many unintended consequences of sharing revenue. So name, image, and likeness allows the players that have value to realize that value. Yet you maintain the structure that allows 150,000 scholarship athletes to go get a higher education and to better their lives through networking and through all sorts of things that happen in team sports, like Coach talked about, the networking like Matt talked about. And I think that's the narrow and very difficult path that we should be on, breaking away, creating a better overarching governing body over college football, and then finding a way for highly marketable athletes to make their money and yet maintain the structure so that the volleyball team, the soccer team, and quite frankly, the 99% of college football athletes that aren't higher value, to maintain their scholarship as well.
All right, let's get to some of those numbers that you hit on, because this kind of solidifies what we're talking about here. We're going to take two major athletic programs and show you just a brief snapshot on what the finances look like. We start at the University of Minnesota. Football in the 2018 fiscal year made over $31 million. Men's basketball had a fantastic financial year, $8.7 million. All the other sports at the University of Minnesota combined lost $26 million. Let's talk about LSU, their football program in 2018. Huge numbers, $55 million. The men's basketball program, low numbers, only a plus $292,000. All the other sports, $24.9 million negative. So what you're looking at right now, Reg, is clearly the image that we've been talking about, that college football is essentially bankrolling the entire athletic division at a majority, if not every institution out there. Look, I played Division I soccer. I knew my role. I knew I was lucky to play soccer. I knew I wasn't bringing in ticket money, no matter how much they charge mom and dad, because they're still going to schlep those couple of bucks out there, and they're still going to drive in from Connecticut to see their son play. I don't want to see that go away. I want to see kids still being able to participate in their sports. And as you all mentioned, having those lifelong memories and connections. Every week, I will get some type of communication from some of my former teammates every single week. And I would be heartbroken to hear other people are losing that. But Reggie, if we decide to pay these players, these college football players, and I know there's the NIL conversation, Joel, that you touched on, and then this 50% number that the Pac-12 is talking about. Without a doubt, Reggie, you're going to see programs go by the wayside. Stanford already cut 11 athletic programs at the end of the 2020-21 academic year. So is there a middle ground, Reggie? Is there a solution? Because, look, this is a negotiation, and every negotiation you ask for more than maybe you really think you can get.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the negotiation, because to me, this is the time, the wealthy people know never to let a good crisis go to waste, right? That's why we always talk about the rich get richer when there is crisis, because they know that's the time to buy low. And then when the market goes back up, they sell high. Right now, this is the time for the players to ask for whatever they can, try to get whatever they can get, because you just listed it. You just showed that graphic on the left side. Football is the main driving force for most of these universities. And that's why we are talking about 50% revenue split. That's why these young kids now realize their value in this sport, because the kids, the student athletes, are the primary stakeholders in this sport. This sport does not happen without them. The coaches do not get paid without those players, right? And so that's why we are here at this position right now. And I think it's important for all the conferences to take this seriously, right? Don't take it lightly. Don't flex your muscles. Don't stick out your chest, but really listen and hear these kids, because I do believe we are reaching a breaking point, and it's going to tip one way or the other. And then you have to also think about when the NIL drops as well. Our student athletes going to be happy about that, because we've already seen very restrictive proposals from the Power 5 conferences and from the NCAA. So again, yes, it's about money, right? And sometimes we get from people that they say, why is it always about money? Why, for these kids, when is it ever going to be enough? When is it going to stop? But that's the thing. It's never been about money for the student athletes. It's been about money for everybody else. And now we're starting to realize and understand our true value in this sport.
Hey, Coach, I would love your thoughts on something really quick, because I think it's very important. If we were to allow a college football player to go to the NFL at any point, would we be having these discussions? Because if they could go to the NFL and they weren't arbitrarily held out of the NFL by the NFLPA and the NFL's rules, then basically college athletics and college football more specifically could say, hey, take it or leave it. This is our model. You've got another road. But the fact that they don't have that other road is why we're talking about this.
I actually had that conversation with several of my colleagues. They're somewhat like-minded, so it might have been a one-sided conversation. It would be one of the first things that I would do is eliminate all restrictions on a player that can go over and live it. You talked about those two players stepping out and not playing this year. It breaks your heart, but I understand. If you remember, we had arguably the best team in America and the best player in America, in Nick Bosa, and he got hurt week 3. And he had a real tough surgery, might have been able to come back near the end of the year. Certainly we were told he could come back and play in the final game against our rivals, et cetera. He wasn't only our best player, he's the toughest guy. He was my guy. He was my captain. And he opted out with his father, and I get it. He didn't want to risk that recurrent injury. And when he looked at me and said $30 million, as much as I couldn't even get out of the chair for a few minutes when he told me he was going to go to the NFL, because I knew what that meant to our team, not just as a player, but as a leader. I understood. I get it. So I would restrict, you're taking that square peg, amateur athletics, slamming it into a round hole called the NFL or professional sports where you can make a living doing it. And I worry. I would eliminate all restriction. Here's the issue. And Reggie Mackin, you have so many hanger-ons. You have so many agents that fill these players with nonsense about. I had a player one time come to me. He ended up not getting drafted, and this was at Florida. And he came up to me and says, "I signed with an agent. The agent promised me he could get me into the second round." And I looked at him like he had 7 heads. Like, coaches or GMs don't talk to agents. They look at videotape. You're not a second rounder. And he ended up not having a degree, not graduating because of the ill-advised information he was receiving. So you will see players hurt. But that's one of the first thing I would do is I would eliminate all obstacles to go to the NFL. You can do that anytime. Go be a professional athlete at any sport, anytime. You have your right as an American and to do that. The second thing I would do is I would do name and likeness, and I'm going to tell on record, I've been on record with this, I am very concerned that will be used as an inducement in recruiting, not fair market value, but it will be inducement. Matter of fact, I know that you've never recruited before if you don't believe that this will be an inducement to get athletes to go to certain schools because car dealers will give them $20,000 or something to put their names on billboards, etc. So those are my 2 thoughts.
I think, Coach, you brought up just kind of education, and Reggie, you had a great point this week on our call about, financial literacy. And, I think it's phenomenal. I think that should be something that should be mandatory amongst all student athletes, not just football. These colleges need to educate their student athletes. And, Coach, to your very point, especially with the way things are shifting with name, image, and likeness, and these third parties going to start to get control of these student athletes and get in their ear and get in their head. I think having classes that educate these players at a young age is so important. I remember even in NFL and training camp, we'd have random, people or financial people come and talk to a group of people about, life after football, your 401k, how to invest in the stock market. But it was a one-time thing. I never learned that in college. And I think that is so important because as we just saw that graphic, what is it? 1%, go on to play pro sports or less than go on to play NFL football. But if you have that education in those 4 or 5 years you were there, that sets you up for life after football. That sets you up for life after college. So I think that's really important, and even important for the 1% that go on. The Bosas, the Chase Youngs, those types of players. So I think that, and I also think, it's a broken record, but the name, image, and likeness, I think is so important. And I think it's going to create so many great opportunities for not just major college football or basketball players, but, female sports, Olympic sports, swimmers. I remember I went to school with a handful of female swimmers who won medals in the Olympics and never got a dime for it. That's going to change, and I think that's exciting for women's sports as well.
Rob, I think it's interesting, and I need your help on this because, frankly, I'm just not that educated in the sport. But I think specifically of female athletes who generally peak a little bit younger in age than males. And you think of Katie Ledecky, if she could still be swimming for Stanford, what would that do to the value of collegiate swimming? Think of Simone Biles. If she could, go to a collegiate championship in the midst of being the best gymnast in the world. Think of, I'm sure you could name me some soccer players who are on the women's.
Mia Hamm in her prime at the University of North Carolina, right?
There you go. Yep. And I'm sure that there are several others, in the soccer landscape, both male and female, that could potentially compete in collegiate athletics.
And college basketball. Look at the powerhouses of UConn and what happened in Oregon this year.
Yeah.
This is not just a college football player pool that would pull in some of this NIL money, but it certainly would be dominant, that in men's basketball. But other sports would clearly benefit, Joel.
And more specifically, I think the female sports, right? Because those are the ones that like I mentioned, Katie Ledecky could make her millions and millions of dollars, probably more than any Stanford football player would make by a factor of 20, because that's her market value. And yet she could still be in the national championship swimming meet. Guess who would watch it? A lot of Americans, right?
Right. So Joel, what if we took the money that an individual is making? Let's just say Trevor Lawrence, for example. What if we took the money? Because we all know Trevor would cash in South Carolina, right? Every company would be rushing to him, would be rushing to Clemson or whoever they have to rush to get access to Trevor, which, as you said, Coach, is a slippery slope. what if a percentage of the money that player takes is then handed over to the rest of the players on the team? So it's more of a team, a team
Good
effort,
luck.
more of a
Absolutely not. Nope.
No, okay, go on. Why?
Nope.
Rob, you're living in a probably similar.
I'm living in a basement right now. Literally, I'm living in a basement. So,
Let me tell you,
I'm trying to find some equity because look, we all know the walk-on kicker isn't getting anything.
Yeah, but that would be the exact same model that we have, just to an individual standpoint, from a group standpoint. Right now, the group is the football team that pays for everybody else. Now you're asking the individual to pay for everybody else. So I would say it's the same injustice to market value, right? And you're just kind of moving the goalpost of where that split
we
happens.
could go on.
In my estimation, if you wanted to start taking revenue to do something good, how about this as an idea? Take 1% of college football revenue and throw it in an escrow account or some sort of health services account that then for the rest of their lives, college football players could tap into and get health insurance. To me, that's where you can do something really positive from the revenue standpoint of college football, rather than just giving a check to a player who's a sophomore in college.
Yeah, and
let's
Reggie, I know
talk.
you're high on the long-term health care of these players as well.
Yeah, I am high on the long-term health of these players because those injuries are long-term, and the NCAA knows that. People who run football know that. Coaches know that. Players know that, right? Every football player, except the punter and the kicker, uses his head and his neck, which is his spine. And when you use that enough times, you're going to have injuries. You're going to have compressed vertebrae. You're going to have all kinds of issues that happen. And some of those stem from college football. And I don't want to see kids who don't make it to the next level stuck with medical bills for the rest of their lives because they're trying to get the proper therapy that they need just so they can feel good, just so they can run down the street with their kids and do normal everyday life things. I don't want to see women's sports go away. And I think we can all agree on that because it's fair. We want to be fair to everybody, right? And we want to make sure that women continue to get these opportunities. But at the same time, I don't want to see young kids paralyzed on football fields, not having medical to take care of some of those injuries. I don't want to see kids getting concussions and then CTE later on down the road. Like one of our teammates, Kevin Ellison, who unfortunately committed suicide from CTE that we later learned about. Those are the kind of stories that people don't talk enough about. We talk about the other things, but we don't focus enough on the injuries because the injuries will last you a lifetime.
Coach, I sense you have a little bit more left in the tank in this conversation.
I do, but Reggie makes you sit back for a minute because I have experience. That's the worst part of the job. Worst part of the job is seeing a young man go down in a tough sport like football. Or my daughter had a concussion in volleyball, and that's the worst thing. And I can't disagree with that one bit. And maybe Joel, I've never heard that before. But here we could go on. This could be a 6-hour show, and it could be all valid points. And I think reality is this: that we live in a capitalistic society where your market value should be worth something. As much as I'm concerned about that, I can't disagree. If Zeke Elliott ran for 250 against Alabama in the Sugar Bowl, his value went through the ceiling. He really shouldn't have had to come back for his junior year. He should be able to market and go play professional sports. So name and likeness and eliminate all restrictions on NL. Here's a thing that I think Reggie brought up a great point yesterday in our conference call. Why is football have to support all sports? Where did that model start? And I get it. Universities have all kinds of different ways of funding things. If we really think, which I do, I think the greatest value, you can't teach what my daughters learn on volleyball on a team. You can't teach that in a classroom. And I'll fight anyone on that. What you learn in the overtime game against so-and-so about you have to do this for your teammates to win, I can't put a price tag on that. And I know these college educations are 80 grand. You get, 50, 60, 70, 80 grand. Georgia Tech happened to be $80,000. I know the value of a degree, and it carries with you. So I'm looking at the underdog. I don't look at it as much as the Reggie and Matt and Chase Young and Zeke, because in my mind, the payday's coming. That payday is coming, and my gosh, that's generational, money, and I get that. I look at it from the blue-collar guy, from the guy that's really is valuing. What's that value of the kid that played at Bowling Green? Now he's a president of a company. Go ask him. He'd probably say, I can't put a value on that. I was a taker, not a giver necessarily. So great conversation. I feel very strongly about the no restriction to the NFL and name and likeness allow it.
I would just answer the one question you posed, and I think this is the elephant in the room in this conversation if we really get down to it. Why does football have to pay for everything? Title IX.
But Title IX does not say football has to pay for that. Title IX says it has to be fair and equal for women and men. But it does not say football is the one that should pay for that.
No, but it implicitly says that, Reggie, because it has to be equal, and there's no comparable female sport that has 85 full scholarships. So if you're going to field a football team, what you're saying is that football team must pay for a comparable 85 full scholarships on the female side. So yes, not specifically, but it is implied that if you field football and you're under the Title IX regulations with it, whichever university is, then that football team will be supporting at least at a minimum 85 full scholarships on the female side as well.
And the football revenue, as we all know this year, is going to go down with what attendance they may or may not have at all. So these fiscal records for 2020 are going to be disheartening to look at when you go further down the road. What's coming in from football, what's coming in from basketball, and how it's going to trickle down and impact so many other programs across the college sports landscape. So much news coming out the last couple of days, including some schedule news. The Big Ten finally announcing Wednesday morning what their schedule is going to look like, which kicks us into gear of thinking about the season that is actually going to start, and it could start as early as this month. Looks more like in early September for most of the conferences. So we have begun our Fox Consensus Top 25. We're going to reveal one team daily until we hit number 1 on August 28th. So today we start with number 25. But first, let's get to some programs that just missed our top 25: Boise State, Kentucky, UCF, Iowa, Louisville, and Washington. We're going to hit 2 of those programs. And I know a couple of you guys think they should be inside the top 5. And we'll start, Matt, with you and the Cardinals.
Yeah, guys, I mean, Louisville, you look at a team from last year, the biggest jump in wins amongst any Power 5 teams in the last 2 years. 2018, they only had 2 wins. Last year, they had 8 wins. Scott Satterfield comes in last year, really starting to change the culture. And, Coach, you can attest to this. You know, it takes a year or 2 to kind of implement what you want from a football team, that winning attitude and that confidence. And they displayed it last year. I know the conference is down, but you can take that momentum and ride it into this year because, one, you have 16 starters returning on your football team. You have a dual threat quarterback in Mikael Cunningham last year, 22 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, runs the ball really well. You have a 1,500-yard rusher and Javion Hawkins coming back as well. So I like this football team. We know the ACC is a winnable conference other than really the cream of the crop being Clemson. So keep an eye on Louisville this year, guys. They certainly have the players and the coach to make a run.
Reggie, why are you high on Boise State?
Well, I like Boise State for a few reasons. One, last year they went undefeated in conference play. They won 10-plus games in the last 4 years, and they had the number 1 scoring offense last year. And when we talk about the state of college sports right now, one of the things that Coach Urban always mentions is if you have a returning system, a returning quarterback, things like that, you are better served and you are better prepared for this season. So that's what Boise has. Hank Bachmeier is coming back. He looked good before he got injured. They have a 1,000-yard rusher, George Halani, and they have a really good slot receiver, Khalil Shakir, who was 4th in the nation in slot receiving yards. So I like this team. I love when I see people go to the Smurf turf and play on there. And Boise is always scrappy, man. They're always a scrappy football team. You can always count on them to make games very interesting.
Reggie, would you have liked to have run on that blue turf?
I would have loved to run on that blue Smurf turf, man. I think I would have looked really fast on that turf.
Yeah, does blue, like black is slimming, does blue make you faster?
Yeah, blue makes you faster. Yeah, for sure.
Then I would love to be on that blue turf. And I know Matt and Joel would back me up on that one. Let's get to our top 25.
Right.
And
nothing makes Matt and I look faster.
Look, close your eyes and trust the time. All right, let's get to our top 25. And we start at number 25. Coach, with your former program, Utah.
Yeah, my formula was leadership and culture, number 1, a returning system or stabilized system of offense and defense, and then a quarterback. The only thing they don't have is a returning quarterback. They lost a lot of players, but I just can't imagine Kyle Whittingham, one of the top coaches in America, The way they recruited, they got strong leadership, strong culture within that organization. I can't imagine them not in the top 25.
And checking at number 24, Joel, will hand Tennessee over to you.
Yeah, I think Tennessee, I think they could be a lot better than 24. This might be a year where they take a little bit of a jump in the SEC East, and quietly the SEC East is challenging the SEC West for dominance in that conference. You've got Florida, you got Georgia, you got now I think Tennessee, maybe even Kentucky with a very good squad. But the reason I like Tennessee is the way that they finished the year last year. I felt like they were building momentum. They started the year so poorly. Remember those early losses to Georgia State and BYU? They were 0-2. But then they rattled off 5 straight wins to get bowl eligible. They go on and they win a bowl game. They found a quarterback at the end. It's the second year in both their offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator system. It's the third year for Pruitt. They went 5-7, now 8-5. I think that they could take a next jump. It wouldn't shock me if they were a 9 or 10 win team this year. That's how much I think of Tennessee.
You always see teams in that third year typically make that big move. Tomorrow, Thursday, we'll unveil number 23, and you can find our entire top 25 day by day on all of our CFB on Fox social media sites. We're going to talk about breakout players. Last week, we talked about breakout programs. Florida and North Carolina were up there. Now it's about individuals. And here's our top 5 breakout players that we anticipate for 2020. And we're going to start in the SEC. At number 5, the sophomore quarterback, Bo Nix. And Bo set Auburn true freshman records for passing yards and passing touchdowns. He was the SEC Freshman of the Year. Coach, we saw him early on in the campaign. I know you were awfully impressed with the future of this young man. At number 4, let's go to Columbus, Ohio. And the wide receiver depth chart, no KJ Hill, no Benjamin Victor. Garrett Wilson, a highly touted talent. Comes in as a true freshman, 30 grabs, 432 yards, and 5 touchdowns. At number 3, another former Urban Meyer program, Florida, and Kyle Trask, 8-2 as a starter last year, 25 passing touchdowns, 7 picks, was much more comfortable at home than he was on the road, and you got to win on the road in the SEC. His efficiency rating, highest by a Gator quarterback since some guy named Tim Tebow. Zamir White from Georgia, the running back, checks in at number 2. Again, no DeAndre Swift. He was the number 1 running back in the 2018 recruiting class, 408 yards on just 78 carries last year, 3 touchdowns as a redshirt freshman. The warning signs, though, he has suffered through 2 torn ACLs. Number 1, Spencer Rattler, number 1 quarterback in the 2019 class, a dual threat 6-foot QB from Phoenix, Arizona. Did play in 3 games last year, but was able to save his red shirt, was 7 for 11, 81 yards, and 1 touchdown. The big note here, Oklahoma has produced 5 straight Heisman finalists at quarterback. Joel Klatt, you have been riding the Spencer Rattler bandwagon for months now. Why is he the number 1 breakout player according to Big Noon Kickoff?
Well, full disclosure, I think number 1 should just say Oklahoma quarterback.
Yep.
Rattler is a bit of a placeholder. No, I think he is a talented player. I've seen him practice a little bit. He's a very talented player. He's going to fit beautifully in Lincoln Riley's system. But the system is just so quarterback friendly. One of the things that Lincoln always tells me, and Coach, I know that you will love this because this is how you coached as well. He basically said, like, if your system offensively is not quarterback friendly, then you need another system, right? And this system is so quarterback friendly with all the different things that they do to put pressure on the defense and yet make it simple for the quarterback to make continue to make those reads both in the run game and the pass game. He's accurate. He's got a quick release. He's athletic. I think Spencer Rattler is going to do a great job for Oklahoma, which is why I think Lincoln Riley's quarterback could be a Heisman finalist once again for the 6th straight year.
I was just tracking his Heisman odds. They continue to improve in his favor. Our Heisman winning QB. What do you think of Rattler?
Yeah, the same with Joel said, and you just combine that with an experienced offensive line coming back. You got Kennedy Brooks, a really good running back. CD Lamb leaves, but Charleston Rambo, kind of the next in line, takes over on the outside. But yeah, when you look at this, you just think of, we look at Baker, Kyler Murray, and even Jalen Hurts last year. Some of the greatest statistical seasons we've seen from a quarterback. He had 2 Heisman Trophy winners, 2 number 1 draft picks. And I just love what Lincoln Riley does, and Joel said it. You know, this is a guy who maximizes the potential and ability and the skill set of each quarterback that he has, and that's what we see on the football field. So there's no doubt in my mind that Spencer Rattler is not only a breakout player, but also a potential Heisman candidate as well.
Matt, with 4 quarterbacks on his list, and at number 5,
yeah, buddy,
Trojan.
People are sleeping on Brew McCoy. I'm telling you, sat out last year, #1 player in America a couple of years ago.
I'm fired up to yell his name when he puts a 50 burger up on somebody. All right, let's talk about running backs right now, Coach. Let's go down to Athens and Zamir White. Again, the history with the ACL injuries, but a vacancy at that running back spot now for the Bulldogs.
Yeah, I knew Zamir up close and personal. We recruited him, and when he came out of high school, man, he was legit. You know, his lateral speed wasn't great. It was very good, but his straight line speed and his power, he's a big, strong back. And Georgia has a great history of offensive linemen and running the ball. And so I just, every year, you know, it's almost like you said, Lincoln Riley quarterback, Georgia tailback's usually up in there. They've had a great history of tailbacks. He's the next great one, I think, to come out of Georgia.
So I'm concerned, though, Coach. It sounds like the Bulldogs might go a little more spread this year, you were telling us. Yeah,
but just that does not – so is Zeke Elliott part of a spread. I mean, there's a misunderstanding. I actually think the lack of, you know, opportunity to get hit is even better for a guy like Zamir White if you're in spread. You don't run into unblocked defenders. In our formation, you can get killed. I mean, because there's usually shots that are going to hit you. But like Reggie Bush, Zeke, and this guy, Zamir White, spread it out, man, and equate numbers with the spread offense. That's even better for tailback.
Yeah, and Coach, you know, or Joel, you spoke about Oklahoma being a quarterback-friendly system, or Georgia is a running back-friendly system. You think about the lead back in Georgia for over the last 8 years, the lead back from Georgia has averaged 1,200 rushing yards and 11 touchdowns. Right. And so just by sheer volume, Zamir White is going to get the football. He's going to be the lead back. He's not going to have to play behind some of those other backs like DeAndre Swift, who just went to the NFL, who's actually one of my favorites to watch. But just by sheer volume, he's going to get the ball. He's going to get it a lot because Georgia loves to run the football a lot. And I agree with Coach. I hated running the football in I formation. I loved when they spread everybody out because that means there was only about 4 or 5 guys in the middle that I had to deal with. And I had 5 linemen to block those 5 guys. And all I had to do was get to the safety.
Coach Rob.
Because you had a really slow quarterback in college.
Coach and Rob, how about our boys just sneaking in those USC wide receivers? Just lightly, just throw
them. You beat me to it. I'm looking at number 2. I'm like, all right. I see what you're doing. All right, so Joel, with that, we passed the baton on to you. Did you sneak in any Buffaloes in your top 5?
No, I did not. I might have gotten away with it last year, but I did not. I tell you, a guy that I think a lot of is Kyle Trask at Florida, and I think he could have a big year. But Florida is right on that precipice, guys, of being a playoff team, right? And I think this might be a year where they could pull that off. Dan Mullen is a phenomenal coach. He's a great quarterback coach, going all the way back to when he was the offensive coordinator for our guy, Urban Meyer. And Trask is that guy. He's 67% completions. He had a great touchdown-interception ratio, and then he finished strong. 3 of his last 4, I think maybe even 4 of his last 5, he threw for 300 yards. So he's got that momentum going into this season with a great team around him. They were 11-2 last year. Watch out for Kyle Trask. I think he could do something.
And Maddie, you say watch out for Bo Nix. Why?
Yeah, I like Bo Nix, and you brought it up to Coach just a little while ago. What we saw from him week 1 against Oregon in that type of environment, kind of welcome to college football. And, you know, I think he picked up a first down on 4th down with his legs late in the game. And then he throws his touchdown pass to win. You just saw the fire and the spirit that Coach always talks about. You just want that guy in the huddle with you. You want that to be your leader. Now, you look at the numbers, and he did struggle against the top teams in his conference, and he's a true freshman. That was going to happen. But I think year 1 to year 2, and Joel can attest to this, that's a big jump as a quarterback. When you just start to that repetition, and those games are so meaningful. Even without an off season, I still expect Bo Nix to take that leap and become more of a leader of this football team and a better player with completion percentage and not turning the ball over as much. But that kid he's got that fire you can see, and that's what I love.
He was poised.
One thing I want to add that just promise me on this show, Rob, you're in charge of this. Make sure no one on our show ever says he's a system quarterback. Because I hear that it's not very intelligent people saying that. They're all system quarterbacks. The good ones are system quarterbacks. And then number 2 is never say that the NFL is a quarterback league. Football is a quarterback sport. It's driven by the quarterback. So those are 2 mandates. Everybody has mandates. That's my mandate. Make sure we never.
You hear that, Reggie? You hear that, Reggie?
Noted.
Yeah, I heard.
Speaking of laughs, Reggie, we got some laughs coming your way. Talking about leg elusiveness. How about that? So there's been a lot of talk lately about the Madden ratings that came out, and our college football Twitter folks sent out the rookie Madden ratings for the last 5 Heisman winners right there. Baker Mayfield getting the highest of the 5 at 81. Joe Burrow, the number 1 draft pick for Cincinnati out of LSU this year, comes in at number 76. So that, of course, got the brain trust of the Big Noon Kickoff offseason crew going right now. And Matt and Reggie, do you guys have any idea what your Madden ratings, Reggie, look like when you came out of college?
Oh, man, I don't know. I bet my speed better have been 99, though.
I bet Reggie was in the mid-80s.
I bet Reggie's was like 87.
Yeah, was my speed 99? That's all that mattered.
I say 85.
They better give me 99 speed because I was pulling away from people.
You did not get 99 speed, my friend, but you did get an 87 average, which to this day is the highest ever Madden ranking given to a rookie, my man. Yeah, so Reggie, 97 speed, 98 agility.
Come on now. Keep going.
Your awareness, however, Reggie, you were not an aware young man, according to Madden, just a 62.
You know what?
I did pick up on that.
I did get hit pretty hard in the NFC Championship game against the Eagles. So I'll take that. I'm okay with that one.
All right. So in 87, Maddie, what do you think you checked in at, my friend?
I'm gonna go 76.
76. Joel Klatt has been on. Joel, I'll give you a quick guess. What do you think for Matt?
I bet Matt was 78.
Urban, I'm gonna throw you. But Urban, do you even know what these numbers
I want to know what my speed was, though.
I got it. So Matt, you came in at an 81.
Oh, wow.
Low 80s.
Matt,
a speed of 64.
Let's talk about the positives, Matt. Okay, the throwing efficiency, 9-0, a 90 burger.
There you go.
But from there it starts to go downhill a little bit. Speed, Matt. What do you think you checked in at speed?
58.
Close, 59.
Yeah,
see, this is good. You know yourself. This is fantastic.
I could pick up first down if I had to.
We saw you lumber for a few. Elusiveness. Slippery word. Elusiveness.
41.
Close. It's low. It's low, and I will validate it because I've seen you when the dinner check arrives. You become awfully elusive. Of 48.
Oh, wow.
Not even a 50 burger, Joel Klatt. A 48 elusiveness.
Hey, at least they had ratings,
right? That was my point. At least somebody cared enough to rate you guys.
That's right.
Right,
I
seriously.
went to a camp, and Detroit didn't even know that I had 10 concussions. And once they found out after they had already signed me, they were like, "Well, we're not putting you in a preseason game." That's great.
And Madden and ratings are nowhere to be found when Coach was done playing at the University of Cincinnati. All right, logo game. It's going to be a surprise. It's just one logo. We're all going to witness it live for the first time right now. We'll see who can chime in. Yeah. Anybody know what that logo is?
Colgate.
That's Colgate.
Seagate. No.
Are you going to be changing that logo, by the way?
Are you?
Notice how we don't have anything to say about much about Colgate, Rob.
What is this? Colgate?
That's where
Mark
Rob
Van Egan,
cool.
Mark Murphy, some great people. Kenny Gamble.
I love it.
Greg Minuski.
I love it. The gate.
I
used to go into the
when you talk about it with your friends, you just call it the gate.
The gate. Yeah, go gate. I used to when I was a Division I athlete, my freshman year, Reggie, checking in at 5'8", 5'9", a $130s. I found my way to the weight room in the off season, and I would lift with Minuski, and he would do the skull crusher tricep thing. But
With
he would
you?
just hand me the bar and just kind of like spot me like this. Like, got it. You're
Why are we
good. Hang in
talking
there,
about-
kid.
Why are we talking about this?
I thought you
Wanna
said
talk
he was
Colgate, man.
doing the
Hey,
skull
what's the
crushers with
Colgate's
you in his
mascot,
hands.
Rob, what's
Skull
your
Crushers,
mascot?
baby. Skull Crushers. Love them.
Skull
All right, boys.
crushers with Rob in his hands.
Yeah, that's right. He was skull crushing me, Reggie.
Yeah, he was skull crushing Rob.
Throwing my limp soccer body around. I love it.
Hey, Rob,
Boys.
don't let these guys hate. They all wish they would have gone to a school named after a toothpaste.
Oh, wow. I've never heard that joke before, Joel Klatt. Joel Klatt just trademarked a Colgate toothpaste joke. Come on, Clatter.
Be
Love
better
it,
than
brother.
that.
Listen,
Be better than that.
but
Clatter, get out of the Hyatt house, will you? We can't wait to see your
We're
new
going to
biz
drive
next
coach
week.
to coach again. Coach is sitting there like, what are we doing right now?
Sometimes with Coach, I can't tell if he's frozen or he's just stopped. But either way, he's checked out, I think.
This is Meyer and Reggie's button-down pullover or
button-down
hoodie.
hoodie is on the way for you, Coach. I'm gonna have them for everybody in the show this year. We're gonna look good.
All right. We're ending this week with button-down hoodies. At least we can laugh. All right. Boys, good seeing you again. We'll check you in next week. Another edition of Big Noon Kickoff, the off season. Button it up, Reg.